All right. Hello and welcome to Awakened Aspects, where we have our second episode of Aspects of Energetics today. And I'm really excited to introduce my friend here, Cari Star. Cari is an intuitive, a psychic medium, a channeler. She's a multidimensional guide. She also works with animals. She's an animal psychic and animal healer, as well as a sigil creator, which is very cool. I love working with sigils and works with light, love, and compassion. So, Cari, welcome. Thanks for joining us today. I want to get into so many things really quick, but I, I'm I know we only have so much amount of time, and there's so many things I want to talk to you about today. But do you want to start by introducing yourself, maybe a little bit about your awakening path, how you came across this work? What do you feel like your
Boy,
intention is? Anything you want to talk about? When we get started, introduce yourself.
sure. So I was born in Mexico. And I guess ever since I was a small kid, I don't have many memories of my childhood, but the few I have, um, there was there was always fae and dragons like around me. They protected me. And I only know this like when I was an adult later on in life. Um, and, and I mean, being Mexican, there's always been a spiritual component to who I am and my culture. But I did not grow up Catholic. I did not grow up religious. My parents, one of them was a communist, and
Wow.
the other one was not. She was ex-Mormon, and she had suffered a lot of abuse through religion and stuff. So the only thing she believed was really in the Virgin of Guadalupe. Like that was the only thing she believed in, and she was spiritual herself, but more like shamanic type stuff. And so that was my influence growing up. I did not have a typical Mexican upbringing of growing up. I'm culturally Catholic because my grandparents and all that were, like Catholic and stuff. And my family, of course, my extended family was, but I was never, I didn't grow up in the church. I didn't go to like, sometimes my mom would take us, but it was always weird to me. I always had to pretend to know what I was doing. And I was like, why are we doing this? I
Oh
don't
my
know.
gosh,
But
so many people. I think so many people have done the same thing. It's growing up in
yeah,
their church. It's like, okay,
yeah.
sign the cross. Wait, which way, left or right? I
Yeah,
don't.
like do the thing. Like I know, like
Yeah.
whenever we would leave, and my grandmother on my dad's side would like give us the cross and stuff. I only felt it had power because it was from her.
Mm.
Like oh, like Granny's gonna do it. Like I should just like like pay attention to be serious. Like I didn't understand, you know. Um, but then we moved to the U.S. My parents brought me undocumented. And that was, another set of stuff. There's been a lot of trauma, as you know. And since you did my chart, like
Oh
there's been a
yeah.
lot of trauma in my
Yeah.
past.
I've done a
Um,
couple readings for Carrie, which are really cool. I may want to touch on a couple things later of what's really
mhm,
cool, some cool things about your chart. But
mhm.
I mean, a lot of star seeds come in with trauma,
Yes,
and some of us are here to do some really deep work,
yes, yes.
so
Um, yeah, I'm definitely one of those. I think all of us are really. But I started doing it since I was born, I think, because my mom did not want me. She wanted a boy. And so like since before I was even born, there was already like a thing, like a line of generational trauma.
yeah.
Um, and so I kind of tried to be Catholic for a little bit in my teens, and it didn't work out. Then I tried to be Wiccan, that also didn't work out. And then I just settled on paganism, just like paganism. That's kind of like what I started to believe in. But I was mostly agnostic throughout my
Yeah.
life. The really first time that something happened was when I was married to the first time. And I was, gosh, must have been in my late 20s. And it was during Halloween. Of course, it was during Halloween. And I lived in Colorado in this like apartment that was on the third floor. And I don't know why that's significant, but my guts are saying tell them where it was. I'm like, okay. And in this apartment, it had a really heavy energy. We lived on top of a couple that that was having some relationship issues. She was being abused by the man, and there was a golden. I remember there was a golden retriever, and we could hear him beat her, and the golden retriever would like kind of. This is what my ex wife told me at the time, that he's sorry pronoun. She saw the dog put himself, like they were opening the door for some reason, and she saw the dog put himself between the woman and the man. So the dog was protecting her
Yeah, that
from the men beating
happens.
her.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and so we would hear the dog like get beat and stuff. And
Oh,
so there was a lot of bad energy in that place.
right. That was above you or below you? Sorry.
That was below me,
Below
below us.
you.
Yeah,
Okay. Wow. Okay.
yeah. Um, and so there was a lot of crazy energy right there. And the first time that I ever saw anything, and I thought it was a dream. Of course, it wasn't a dream. It was an astral travel. I was sleeping next to, at the time, my husband, um, and he was bipolar, and so there was a lot of stuff that he was dealing with at the time. And what happened was I went into this realm, and now I know there was a realm. It was a dimension. It was a lower frequency dimension, and I saw a being. I saw a being that was a lower frequency being. Honestly, I don't really recall what it looked like that much. It's not really relevant, but the being was sucking the energy, the life force of my husband at the time. And I just remember calling on Venus, weirdly enough, Venus in Spanish, which was it's important. That part is important for some reason. I called on Venus. I said something like, Venus, my star, protect me, or something like that, or give me like energy. And the weird part is that the realm looked exactly like our apartment, just kind of, it felt heavier, and there was like a sepia dark tone to it. And so I looked up at the ceiling and a light opened up. And then the light just like shined on me. And I basically tugged that being off of my husband and threw it into another dimension. And that was the first time that I had done any kind of energy work. And after that night, I believed in God.
Wow, that's fascinating. So
Yeah.
that was done in your dreams, your dream time.
It was my astral
Okay.
travel time. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I don't want to, bring up any kind of anything that from your ex from the first marriage that
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
they don't want to share, but
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
feel like from when you think about levels of a home or levels of a building, the lower floor is going to be
Uh-huh.
the sub
Yes.
level subconscious, and
Mm-hmm.
it could be some buried trauma there, ancestral trauma, and it seems like you do quite a bit of channeling.
Yes.
So you think that you were picking up on her dark hidden shadows or something that was
Yes.
buried within her past, or anything
Mm-hmm.
like that, and so
Mm-hmm.
it was kind of playing out. And sometimes these things play out like, when we hide things so much or when we don't deal with them, even so, sometimes we don't even know. I mean, it doesn't necessarily
Mm-hmm.
mean we're hiding it.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we don't even know what's going on. Something from an ancestral, like I said, ancestral even could be that far back, and that we need to integrate it because it's coming in through us, and it'll show up through our
Yeah.
relationship if we don't deal
Yeah.
with it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting. And then the second time with your other spouse, it was like, again, it was
Mm-hmm.
like their something in, some darkness looming within them that you were called then to kind of witness and to help
Mm-hmm.
to heal.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
you do that. I think I read that on your chart before. You do have like a Pisces
Yes.
eighth house, and then you have like
Yes.
yeah, I'm not gonna get too much in astrology, but you have
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
Scorpio, Saturn,
Yes.
Pluto, Mars,
Yes. Yes.
stellium.
Mhm.
And that's really intense. That's really someone
Mhm.
who can really channel and like other things from other people, but can be very healing, you can heal
Mhm.
them. So that's
Yeah.
interesting. So your training was essentially in your dream time. So then
Yeah.
what happened after that? Like, did you feel like when you woke up, oh, I did something, or were you scared? Or like how did you feel when you woke up and kind of realized that what you had the fear in God is what you said, but
I actually battled that thing for a couple of days because
okay.
I wanted to come back. And I had to, so I grew up being a people pleaser. Okay.
Hmm.
So I mean, you know this, that I had a lot of training with my own immediate family. Um, a lot of them have mental illnesses. I don't want to get too much into that, but so I was afraid to assert myself. You know, as a light worker, I didn't know this, of course, at the time, but as a light worker, I was afraid to assert myself and battle, literally battle. You know, this parasite. It really was just a parasite of being. Um, and I had to learn. I had to learn to say, you know, no, this is no, you can't come back. Like, stay there. You're no longer needed.
Hmm. You have to assert
Um,
boundaries.
yes,
Interesting.
I had to. And I had help all throughout everything that happened in my journey. I've always had help, like actual people. I had a friend who was Wiccan, and I didn't know he was Wiccan all this time. He was just a computer science friend at the time. I was doing computer science, you know, in college, and he told me because I told him that this had happened to us. We were playing like tabletop games because we were nerds, and he was just a local friend, and he looked at me and he said, "Oh, there's things here in your apartment." And I was like, "What?" I should have like, "What do you mean? What, how do you know?" Like, it was just weird because, you know, in Colorado, that's like the way that I grew up was, you know, in very like conservative places. And so somebody just coming up to me and saying that they saw stuff and they felt stuff, I was like, what's going on? I was really like weirded out, but I
Were you
accepted it, you know,
validated
I
by,
went
were
with
you,
it. I
yeah.
was very validated. Like, he told me, I remember still to this day what he said to me. He said, it is imperative that you find out what you believe in. And I was like, okay. It felt like he was channeling. You know, now that I know, he probably was channeling. And I never talked to him again after all this stuff happened. This is how it works. I now know, like, people come into your life, they help you, and they leave, and that's okay. You know, and that's what happened. Because of this friend, you know, I finally was like, yeah, well, what I believed in back then, like, I knew that there was a God, but not a religious God. I knew that there was something, you know, that loved us unconditionally. That's what I knew. But I started to say, well, I believe in Quetzalcoatl, the plumed serpent, you know, the Aztec God, and that's what I believed in, and that's what I believed in from that day.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, my daughter, I try to bring up, I try to, we talk about God and spirituality and everything, but I don't want to indoctrinate her. And I'm trying to be very careful
Mm-hmm.
because I want her to kind of come up with her cosmology of her
Mm-hmm.
own without having
Mm-hmm.
to be tainted by other things. And
I
um,
understand that.
but one thing I've always taught her about was dragons and
Yes.
the power of dragons and like
Yes.
the sheer the spiritual essence of the dragon and how they can come in and do so much for us and we can work with them. So she's
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, my God's a dragon. And I'm like, okay, well, I mean, that's okay for now. I will see how it evolves. She's only 10, but
Mm-hmm.
she really holds on to that. So it's really interesting to hear you talk about the Quetzalcoatl, right? It's a similar concept. So it
Yes.
is a force. It's a
Yes.
force that really I think works with the earth too and works with the earth grids and works with
Mm-hmm.
our planet. So
Mm-hmm.
even though it's an other dimension or it's an other dimensional
Mm-hmm.
existence. um yeah.
Yeah. I found out actually that for me, I call him Ketz because he is a type of being. He is a type of dragon. And when he wasn't kind of when he wasn't assisting me, he had duties, like he had things to do. He was the wind. Whenever I would feel like the wind just come in really strongly, I knew that was him. And so he had like a duality. And that's one of the things that I believe in the Aztec myths, you know, of the ancestors. Like they believe that he was the wind too. And he had, it was like, weirdly enough, I think it was related to Gemini. And, you know, I'm a Gemini. So yeah.
You have a lot of Gemini too.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I later on realized I can talk to him now. Like he will come and he's one of my guys. If when we've been linked for lots of lives, I was an Aztec priestess in one of my lifetimes, and I worked with him.
So how did you
Yeah.
come across some of these memories of working with some of these multidimensional beings?
Okay. So the next stage of waking up, I got a divorce, and in the process when I was getting a divorce, I have this friend who's now my partner. Um, and that was in 2020. I was Things were not going well for me. You know, I had a lot of illnesses, as you know, and a lot of stress. And because of that, I technically I'm considered disabled. And so I couldn't get a job. I didn't finish school. All this stuff. Um, and basically, at that point, was like a tower moment. It was a time where like my life was crumbling, and I felt this need to just go get out of. At the time, I was in Washington State, and it was just like I need to leave. I need to go. I need to go take a vacation or something. And my friend lived in Utah, and so we never met. We've known each other for like 10 years online, and we never met. And I was just like, okay, I'm gonna go visit you. Is that cool? And he was like, yeah, come visit me. And I was like, we'll go see, like, because I'm from Colorado, basically. He lived in Utah. I was like, it's the same stuff. Like I know the Rocky Mountains. It's gonna be fine, you know. And so I come in, and within a few days, COVID broke. Literally in the same hospital that I used to go to. That was the first outbreak. And obviously I couldn't come back. and, and so I was like, what's happening? And you know, it was funny because we started to just realize that we love each other, you know, and it happened very, very, very fast. And I couldn't come back because of COVID and all this stuff. I was really high risk. I basically, if I had gotten COVID, I would have died like fast because of my autoimmune system. Um, and so then I just stayed in Utah. You know, I just stayed in his home. I had nothing to go back to. You know, I had a house. We were going to sell it, all this stuff. And then I think it was within a month of being with him, I had my first vision in the kitchen. I saw COVID. Like my visions don't come, like they're not literal visions. They are metaphors, and they're very scary. Like the first time, the first thing I saw about COVID was like these people picketing outside our home, and there was an orange sky. Like it was you know doomsday basically. And that was my first vision I ever had. And it was while I was holding his hand. This is important
Was this
because
spontaneous vision? Like out of nowhere? Okay.
I lost, like, I was seeing it like in my mind's eye, and I was like, what's happening? What's happening? What's happening? You know what I mean? And I didn't know what was happening. And I was scared, like, because it was so scary. The feelings come, you know, the emotions and everything come with the visions. And we ended up buying a machete because we were scared that we were going to have riding people outside and all this stuff just for self-defense or something. We never used a machete, of course, you know, and I didn't know. I learned now what that my visions are just, you know, they're telling me, they're like, to it's nothing really to be concerned about. I've learned. It's just they're telling me the timelines. They're telling you what could be possible and what might be really possible. When I see a vision, then that more than likely that is more, it's probability, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that is interesting. You know, the beginning of 2020, I had a lot of dreams.
Mhm.
And one of them is I was going on an airplane and I was about to take off on an airplane. And I remember sitting there and the flight attendant was going around and giving everyone let the oxygen masks down from the top and was
Oh,
giving everyone
okay.
oxygen masks and told us that we were on our way to Russia and everyone was
Wow.
on their way to Russia and we had to
Wow.
put on the oxygen mask and fall asleep in order to get there. And
Oh my gosh.
yeah, this was even before COVID. This was like February before anyone announced
Oh
anything
my
on COVID.
gosh.
And I remember thinking, I don't want to put that oxygen mask on. I want to stay awake for this. And I hope they
Okay.
don't make me put that oxygen mask on. And I woke up from the dream. And then I remember thinking, what the hell was that? It's like, what is going on? And then, like, not even like a week later, they announced, that COVID was, kind
Hmm.
of
Hmm.
spreading and it was an
Hmm.
international issue and to wear masks and things like that. And I was just like,
Wow.
wow, so bizarre. So I remember
Yeah.
at the time too, I was seeing an energy healer and she's like, your third eye chakra is so wide open. She's like, do you know that?
Wow.
And I'm like, she's like, what have you been doing? I'm like, well, here's the thing. I kind of, and this was back into, I think the last time I did this was at the end of, it was in, I think at the beginning of 2020, very, very start of 2020,
Hmm.
I had done
Hmm.
ayahuasca. And
Of
I
course.
think it blew open a lot of my, it was just, I was just really, really,
Your
really,
abilities. Yeah.
yeah, it was very
Hmm.
psychic at the time.
Yeah.
And she's like, you need to be careful because if it's too open, others may be using it, not just you. And I'm like, what do you
Yeah.
mean by that?
Oh man,
So
did I learn about that too? Believe me, I learned about that too.
tell
Nobody
me,
told
tell me
me.
what you think about that because, like,
Yeah.
I didn't really understand it, but then it started to
Hmm.
make sense
Hmm.
much later. But what do
Hmm.
you think? Do
Hmm.
you think like, and who are these others that are using our, different points, like chakra points or whatever, our pineal gland or our third
Yeah.
eye, and how?
Yeah.
Why?
I want to be really careful here
Okay.
because there is a um I want to say a theme going around in the spiritual community that there's bad and good, you know. And that is the way that we see it. This is my opinion. The way that we see it as human beings. We are star beings incarnated into human bodies and to have a human experience. That's my opinion. But all of us grow with this duality and this polarity that like that's bad, that's good. Like we even call like food bad or good, and that's not what I have learned. What I have learned is that there's darkness and there's light, and we need the darkness to see the light. And as you know, I'm very aware and I am very intimately aware of the darkness because there's been a lot of darkness in my life and in my chart and in my past lives. There's been a lot of darkness. Um, I think that there are just all types of beings and there are so many dimensions. And, we can't even begin to understand. Like my background is in physics. I took quantum physics for a year and I didn't understand why I was fascinated by it when I was taking it in college. And now I know why. I was being trained, you know. I did, the hard mathematics, all that stuff fascinated me. And now I think the reason why I did it is because I was trying to understand how to express spirituality in a quantum way, in a way like I can talk to, for example, my partner's not spiritual. He's very much a logical person, but I can try to explain things to him through math and science. And honestly, that's my lens of how I see spirituality. I believe that we're all just antennas, you know, and all of us can do all the things that we talk about in the spiritual community. Some of us just have a longer antenna that's more sensitive, and we've done the work in past lives to be able to get here.
Yeah.
Um, and so to answer your question, I think that there are beings that need to feed on others, to feed on life force. And do they have agendas? Probably. Like some of them do have agendas, And there are things that my guys have sent me to do that I had no idea existed. Like these are things that like I grew up with, the super religious Catholic old ladies, from Mexico that like, Day of the Dead is one of our traditions, and it's
Yes.
it's it's a it's a pre-Hispanic, like it's an Aztec tradition, and it's about death and celebrating death and honoring our ancestors. But there were ladies like where I was, when I was young, that said that was of the devil. you know, like they, and
Yeah.
I didn't understand why. Like it was just like, why? Like we're there's crosses in our cemeteries. Like we're trying to honor them. Like to me, understand why ladies were saying that was of the devil when I was a child, and now I understand why. But I that's what I think, and I have seen and interacted and quite honestly battled beings off of people. Um, I don't know what to call it. You can call it an exorcism. I don't know. I travel in my astral time to help people and get rid. Not, I don't even want to say get rid. It's more like communicate with these darker beings, and they know me. I'm known for some reason. Like I'm known. I know their names. And there was one time, I want to tell you this because it's interesting. I was At the time, I had a friend who had a lot of darkness about him, and these are friends that I found online, and I found them through Discord, I think. And this friend, he just was asking me for help because at the time I had just, I had awakened, and then my spiritual awakening was very fast. Everything started to just boom, 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 boom after the whole vision thing. And he told me, I feel like I'm going crazy. I have this psychosis thing. Like there's this being that I see, and he would sort of try and get himself into a spiritual kind of like meditation through marijuana. And that's how he would see these beings that would talk to him, and they would tell him horrible things, like kill yourself, all these things. Um, and so I set out to be like, well, I want to help you somehow. He was my friend, and I wanted to help him. And so in my astral time, I went to, I would say, an even lower frequency dimension than the previous being that I had gotten up from my ex. And the being just looked like an eel, a black eel. It was
Hmm.
long, it was heavy, and I found myself with this eel around my arm in this dimension, which you could barely see anything. It was very dark. And I said his name. And I remember at the time, I was like, really? We're going to do this again? Name? And I was like, that I'm just going to like banish you again. I said these things. It was weird. Like it was like we were just having like tea or something, like coffee. Like, really? We're going to do this again? Come on. And I remember the being trying to hurt me. And there was light that just came out of me, and it hurt him. I heard him scream. It was weird. Like I heard him scream, and I was just like, we're just gonna keep doing this again and again. What that I will vanish you again, and like this is what we keep doing over and over. Like, and that was it. Like I woke up, I was like, what the hell? Like it was so weird. And then my friend told me, what did you do? And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, he's gone. And I was like, oh. And that when I realized I can do these things.
Wow. This wasn't in your dream time, or was that one in your dream time too?
It was my astral dream
That was
time.
your
Yes.
astral dream time.
Yes.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
And my friend could tell because the thing was gone.
Okay. So he knew it was gone. Why? Did he like smoke, get high, and
He
then it wasn't
didn't
there?
he didn't feel bad anymore.
Oh,
But then
okay.
of course it came back because he was doing, there's addiction, such things, and
Okay.
addiction kind of can sometimes bring them back. That was
Oh
up to
yeah.
him.
Oh yeah, yeah,
That
yeah.
was up to
That's
him.
so interesting because you were talking to him as if you were that guy's subconscious or your friend's subconscious. I'm just assuming it's a guy. You were
Yeah.
so this is so interesting. Like you basically communicate with the other person's subconscious shadows. And
I
you're
think
like
so.
you
Yeah.
you go into that state as them in their subconscious and then you work it out there that in that place. And
Yep.
it's like they have to invite you, which you seem to be invited when you're in these
Hmm.
relationships, right? Because the
Hmm.
relationship invites you in.
And I knew that being already. I had a relationship with that being,
Right, because
with
you
the
were him.
darker
I
being.
feel I feel like you were in his
Oh
subconscious.
gosh, I didn't even think
Yeah,
about
did you
that.
ever think about that? Because like I this is
No.
just my intuition, but I could
My
be completely
gosh.
wrong. But
Now I
because you're a
understand why.
shamanic
Now I
traveler,
understand.
yeah,
Okay, okay,
that's the
okay.
shamanic traveling, right? And so you're
Hmm.
going through the astral. What you're doing is you're going in. So the astral is really, I mean, the subconscious and the astral are like really the one and the same thing. But you're like going, and then it's all a shared plane. And so when you're
Yeah.
shamanic, like yourself, sometimes this is like a path of knowing, of
Hmm. Hmm.
self-knowing and knowing what's you
Hmm.
and what's not. But it
Hmm.
seems like you really just automatically go into that other person's subconscious and start to work through them, their shadow aspects. So that's
Yeah.
really interesting. That's so
Yeah.
shamanic, you know?
Yep. Yep.
So that's really cool. So like so at what point have you like figured, okay, well, these things that I'm able to see and do and feel are they mine or are they someone else's? Like, have you ever kind of like gotten to that?
I mean, I knew that that being was his. I want to call him his parasite, but I've kind of, this is gonna sound maybe kind of weird, but I've started to understand that every being deserves compassion. And so for me, like, yes, they suck the life force out of us, but they're still beings, and the way to really sort of um, put in boundaries and stuff is to shower them with love and compassion. They
Oh,
don't like
yeah.
that. They
Yeah.
don't
Oh,
like
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
They hate that. And so, through all my journey and stuff, at this point, beings will come to me, like darker beings. I can see them in my mind's eye. They'll come to me. They know that they can come to me. They know that I'm a safe person to come to have them, to get help from me. I've oh gosh, it's like that's the work, that's kind of like my work, where I'll have like faith come and be like, hey, there's a dispute here, like, can you kind of mediate? And I'll be like, okay. Or I'll have draconians come that I'll see them and they're in chains, and they'll ask me to free them. um
Draconians?
Draconians,
D-
reptilians.
oh,
Yes,
like draconian reptilians. Okay.
yes, yes. And
Can I
I
ask
did.
you? Sorry,
Yes.
go ahead. I'm interrupting you. Go ahead. I'll ask you after
um
this.
I have done, like, BHT. It's kind of like UHT, but like online.
Oh, it's BQ. Yeah, that's what I do. That's yeah,
Oh, okay.
BQH.
Oh
BQH. Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
that's the one that's
Yeah.
that's the term. I've in one of those sessions, I found out that I had been a reptilian, and that's why they trusted me to come. They know
Mm.
that I'm impartial. That they know that I'm neutral, and if they're willing to do the work to get to higher dimensions, I help them get there. And I love that. I love doing it. It's very satisfying. I always cry because it's so beautiful. Because, seeing their suffering too, like the reptilians really like to enslave their people. And I mean, at least in my experience, and they always, in that life that I had, I was a grunt. I literally, I was a grunt during the Lyran Wars,
Mhm.
and they were just killing people left and killing beings left and right, and I was one of the ones who picked up the pieces of the limbs of beings. Oh, not they weren't even limbs; they were just like remains. And I was one who
Oh,
cleaned up. I was one of those grunts. I wasn't even given like personhood, if I remember correctly. Like, I wasn't even given personhood, and so I just put them in. Like, I would bury them. Sometimes we would have furnaces, And I hated that life. I hated being that. I hated not having freedom. And you know, and so I have learned to have compassion for all types of beings.
So when did you start really I guess downloading information about your galactic lives and things you were in other
It was
dimensions?
right after the vision I had in 2020.
Well,
I
so
will
many of
have to
us woke up
say,
more in 2020, didn't we?
yes, I will have to say that it was a hard training for me. I know some people have like really nice trainings, and I'm always like a little jealous.
I don't know anyone who has had a nice training.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
really? Oh, gosh.
Not
Oh, gosh.
personally. I mean,
Wow. Well, I guess some of us then are more like maybe I've heard like some really good stories, so I'm just kind of like, oh, like, you know, but anyway,
yeah, they're probably
um,
stories.
lying. I don't know.
I have to give us
Um,
part of they give us the fluffy part. They don't give
yeah,
us the
yeah,
mess. Some people don't. Some
you're
people like to
right.
wrap things up in a nice bow, you know.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, no, I'm not. I'm not like that. I prefer
Yeah.
to be told the truth. But I started I started with visions. I started with just knowing, you know, I don't know what that's called, clairsentience, I think that's called. With just knowing. And
The
then, oh boy,
claircognizance, I believe that's what that
yeah,
is. Because the
claircognizance.
clairsentience is feeling into it. You feel it in your
I feel
body.
I have all the clears.
Okay.
I have all of them. But the thing that really started after that was channel. I started channeling beings from other dimensions, from other times, and from other planets. And the way that it would come through is through my spine. It was painful. It was really, really painful. The higher dimension a being was, the more painful it was. And the first beings that I channeled were from Apollonia. What I was told was that I was a starseed from Apollonia, and that I was here to do a job, to do a mission, and that I had reincarnated. And then I started having memories. They just came. They just came to me. And I started meeting people, you know, and people that came and went. Some people stayed, you know, that kind of thing. And then I started channeling beings from Vega, from Lyra, from the Galactic Federation of Light, you know, and eventually I channel beings from Andromeda, and now I can channel beings from Antares. That's what it was.
Okay. So when you channel these beings, what kind of conversations are you having with them? Like, why are they coming in through you? What do they want?
A lot of the time, they would tell me what was happening in the world, what was happening with, you know, COVID, or what was happening with my own life. They were trying to tell me that kind of stuff. And also, they were trying to teach me technology through they were doing surgery, etheric surgery on me a lot of the time. They do that a lot. They were doing etheric surgery on me. And there was one time, I think it was in 2021, that I had to go to the ER, proper ER, because I was passing out. And I knew something was wrong. And I had my partner call 911, and the firefighters came, and they didn't know what was wrong with me. I was just passing out, kept passing out and passing out. They took me to the hospital, you know, and one of the things that's important, I mean, all of us, I think, are really sensitive to things. It's really hard to put an IV in me. I have moving veins. And this guy, I remember thinking, between like passing out, you know, like, he did a really great job the first time, because usually they have to use an ultrasound to put an IV in me, and he just did a really great job. And I remember wanting to tell him, "You did, you're amazing." You know, he was trying to tell him this, but I mean, I couldn't, because I was passing out. I couldn't even talk.
Okay. Do you know
You
what was
know, and
wrong?
yes, they told me later, and I saw, when I was in the hospital, I saw Arcturians do etheric surgery on me in the scene. That's what they were doing. And they were saying, "You're going to be fine. We just needed you to be in a facility, so that we knew that if something went wrong with your body, you would be taken care of." And I was like, okay. And later on, they told me it was a parasite. It was a parasite in my brainstem that they had to take out. And that's when I started to learn I had to practice spiritual hygiene. I did not know what that was. And so then I started to see parasites, take out parasites from my partner, take out parasites from me, and that's something that I started to learn.
Okay. So can you do that work with others? Are you able to remove energetic parasites then? And
I did do it. I did a sort of exorcism on a friend, and yeah, I did that. I stayed up for like hours. You know how sometimes, and when you're in the awakening, sometimes there are times when you just live off of life force, like prana, and you don't eat for like a day, and you're
yeah,
completely fine.
where you feel manic. Yeah, that's
And that
yeah.
day, I took out a parasite from a friend for like 5 hours. It took five
Okay.
hours.
So you kind of did that with the eel with that friend with the addiction. It's kind of
Yeah,
similar,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
But that was during my dream time. This was like
Right.
awake.
Right. Yeah, I think it's more of like an intention. And that's, something I'm really curious in how people
Mm-hmm.
come to understand how to do that with it consciously with intention, because I feel like that's such a skill. But
It was my
even to
higher
even
self that just, oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, it's okay. Yeah, go ahead. It's your higher self, then
uh,
it's
my
that.
higher self just takes over
Mhm.
and it tells me completely what to do. That's what it feels like. And
Yeah.
obviously, you feel kind of like woozy a little bit. And it's because I've done it in past lives. I know exactly what to do.
hmm And you just trust the process. See, I'm not someone who's like
Yeah.
that. Like I have to have full control of everything. I need to know what's going on at all
Yeah.
times. And I'm like, that's why I'm
Yeah.
so into astrology. I'm like, exactly what transit is causing
Yeah. I
this.
see. Okay. Yeah,
So
no, I mean, I think for me it was like fast and hard. It's like if you don't do this, your friend's gonna not be okay. And I'm like, all right, let's do it. You know what I mean? Like it was just kind of like an emergency, quite honestly. That's always been like the jumps I make. They're emergencies. You have to do something about it. Otherwise, and I know that that's what my guys do. They push me. They push me because they know I'm stubborn. I'm stubborn, stubborn, stubborn. And if they don't push me, I don't do some stuff. Mm-hmm.
okay. So the nervous system and the spine is really where I've learned a lot of parasitic
Mm-hmm.
energetic attachments
Oh
like to
wow.
latch on
Wow.
to.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they wrap around and they really latch on there. I think
Yeah.
that's part of, the
Yeah.
channeling system that we bring
Yes.
in and everything,
Yes.
and they kind of will take advantage of that. So yeah, it's really interesting when you think about what is actually working through us. So the fact that you're so allowing is that's courage, it's courageous.
But thank you. But I want to tell you one thing because it's very interesting. I've never heard this before. So there are also people call them contracts, but I call them agreements that sometimes we have with beings who are kind of parasitic. So I think it was probably in 2022. I was in this apartment, um, and I was doing a Kuan meditation, and I freaking love Kuan Yin. She has come to me. I adore her.
Oh, that's great.
Um,
Beautiful being. Yes.
yeah, it's very beautiful. And she, after the meditation, oh no, it was during the meditation. All of a sudden, in my etheric light body, I saw a chasm just open all over my body. It opened. And it was these adorable little beings just came out. It was like, hey Carol, like that's what they call me. Like, we're coming out now. And I was like, what? And they're like, we're ready. And I was like, what do you mean? And they were like, you basically what I found out was that I had incubated these beings inside of me for lifetimes because they needed it. They needed that. And it was parasitic. They were living over my life force. And they said, we're leaving now. We're gonna go to like we're gonna ascend to our dimension. Eventually, actually they were just evolving. And they left. And I cried so hard, Yara. I was so sad.
This was just out of nowhere. There was
I
nothing that
don't know.
triggered
I
it.
don't during the meditation. During the meditation, it was a
Ah, the Kuan Yin
compassion.
meditation.
Yes.
Okay.
And all of a sudden they just left. And I was for a day, I was distraught.
Would you know
I
what they
told
were?
they were just beings that we had agreed that to, like, I was their incubator. That's
Okay.
happened twice now. Twice.
Wow.
I
So were
know.
they like human looking or were they
No, they were not
other
human looking.
okay,
They
what did
look
they
like
look like?
amoebas. They look like amoebas.
Okay.
Very transparent amoebas.
Uh-huh.
And they just flew off into the light.
Interesting. Do you know
And
anything
I've
about
never,
you never heard from them again after that?
no, no,
Okay.
that
Do
was
you
it.
have you ever heard about if you've heard about the secret space program and how some people are in the etheric you kind of gestate different embryos and have
Oh
children
no.
in
Oh
other
wait, the hybrid
dimensions?
kids?
Yeah.
Yes, I have heard of that.
Okay. Have you ever like come across anything like that at all?
Yes. Um, this is, I just, I have a friend, and she is basically, I found her, and they want me to talk about the archangel stuff. Um, so I, I wasn't really into a lot of social media, but at some point, I think it was during 2022, my guys asked me to join Instagram because I was going to find community there. And I was like reluctant, but stubborn, but I did it anyway. And then I found this entire community where where I felt like there was something. The thing is, like, my guys sent me to places to root out darkness, to root out injustice. They always do this, which is not really fun. I gotta say, like, it's not fun to
They
be the
keep you
one that's like,
busy. I hope they
I know, I
I
know.
hope that you're getting something out of that.
I mean, I do, of course, but like, it's just like, uh and this happens in real life too. Like, I will have to call on, like, Lyft drivers and report them because they're creepy and pervy, all this stuff. I'm serious. Like, this happens to me all the time.
Oh my
And my
God.
friend, she's the same. They do the same thing to her. Oh, gosh. And so in this community on Instagram, I started to, for some reason, all of a sudden I had like friends that were spiritual, and I was like, okay. And this is the part that it's hard for me to talk about, because at one point they all were talking about how a lot of them had an archangel or angel higher self. And I can believe a lot of stuff, but the whole angel thing was kind of like, it felt like it was a hierarchical thing. Like, I'm better than you because I'm an archangel kind of thing. And some of them thought about it that way. Some of them didn't. But I had a problem with it. I struggled with this a lot because they told me eventually, you have an archangel self. And I remember, and I told my guys, go F yourselves, guys. This can't be true. I was mad at them.
I love
This
it. I love it.
I told them, like, no, I'm no better than anybody else. Like, what the heck, you know? But they realized, like, no, like, that's not how it works. This like archangels and angels are just beings, and I realized very quickly that that's not how archangels even work, because there's a lot of, like, you know, um, there's a lot of, I'm better than you because I'm an angel. That's not how it works. And what started happening is I started channeling Mother Sophia.
Wow.
I started channeling
I'm
her.
like wearing the mother of the with the Virgin Mary right now
Mm-hmm,
today.
mm-hmm.
I felt very connected to
Oh, that's great. That's great.
yeah, the mother
Yes,
archetype.
yes,
Yeah. Mother Sophia.
yes.
Wow. Have you studied anything about
Mother Sophia, no. And because she too was like, she had an archangel higher self, she had an archangel name, and they would take us to, like, meetings, literal archangel meetings. They would take us, like, our consciousness would go there, and they would tell us things. And I remember at the time I was just like, what's happening? Like, I did not know anything about the archangels. I started to learn more about it. But what happened was, I realized that the reason why, I can do this frequency toning is because I had a higher self that was an archangel. that I lived in that realm, and the frequencies that I can do are angelic, literally.
Right.
Um, and it was crazy. It was a crazy time, but that started a time where there was a lot of false light. There was a lot of confusion. Oh yeah, they sent me things to root out. They sent me to this group of people to root out the false light. And I don't want to name names, but they're telling me I should at least say the archangel name. It was a false Michael
Oh
that
yeah.
was coming through in the community and literally possessed the person, and it wreaked havoc in our group. It wreaked havoc. It was awful. There was drama and finger pointing and all of the stuff. And I remember at the time, I'm like, guys, why? Why do I have to be the one to point fingers and be like, hey, something, there's a discrepancy here. Check it out. Then it divided our group into people who
I
went to
know. And then
one
everyone
way.
blames you, you become the scapegoat. I mean, that's
Yes,
honestly, yeah, that's stereotypical, pretty typical of a Chiron conjunct Sun or a Chiron
God,
conjunct North Node, and you
of
have
course.
both. You have both. That's really
Of course,
tough.
I have both.
That's really tough because like you're supposed to be here to say, but you damned if you do, damned if you don't. But you know what? It's one of those
Yes.
things that you're responsible. That's hard, And you know what? There is the Archangel Michael is it's a big false light. And
Yes.
whenever I see someone starting to channel our Archangel Michael, I'm like, oh gosh, no.
I'm
It's
still
like
angry at him. I'm still angry at him, but because he was the first archangel that came to me.
okay.
He was the first one. And I had a connection with him. And all of a sudden, I found all these things about him. And he started to act weird. And I was like, what's going on?
Started to act
There was a
creepy.
lot. Yes, there
Like
was
the
a
creepy
lot of
Uber driver.
confusion. There was a
Yeah.
lot of
And that's
confusion.
one thing, yeah, that's like they'll create confusion, the false light, which is, what it's called, Luciferic in a way where it
Oh,
becomes
wow.
very,
Yes.
yeah, it
Yes.
becomes very confusing and creates chaos or that kind of thing. Yeah, well, that's interesting that he came to you first is almost like he was hazing you, like you were getting
Yeah.
hazed.
And when I finally realized what he was doing, he came to me and started crying dramatically. And I was like, dude, I was just like, dude, control yourself. Like, compose yourself. Like, seriously, you're an archangel. Like, as somebody who has a higher self as an archangel, I'm like, no, like this is important stuff. Like, why are you acting like a child? You know what I mean?
Was he trying to
And
have you have pity on him or what was the okay.
he was trying to drain me because he knew that if he could take me out of the chessboard, everybody would not see what he was doing. Some of us did, but most of them didn't. Um, and
Okay.
that's where I learned about direct energy weapons, and I started to get attacked bad, like psychic attacks and stuff. Like, and that's where I learned that my cat has Merlin essence in him. One of my cats has Merlin essence in him, and he started to create grids and defense systems in our bedroom. And I was like
What is your cat's
fascinated.
name?
Chansey.
Okay.
Yeah,
Chansey?
Chansey. He's a
Okay.
tuxedo kitty. He's a very, very introverted cat, very loving kitty, more like a dog, really. But this is where I learned that I can talk to animals. There was one time that he stared at me, and he has a really close connection with my partner. He stared at me, and the way the animals, at least how I have experienced it, can talk to you. They'll stare at you, and you feel a prickling in the back of your head, and it feels dire to not look away. It feels like you should not look away or you'll die or something. Like, seriously, this is what it feels like. He looked at me and he said, I would like a tower to be near him. And he meant my partner. And I was like, okay. animals just don't have like pretense. They speak in a very interesting way. And since then, I saw him do the work he did. He under my bed, he was creating um, ley lines at first. Then he created this. I don't even know what to call it. Like it was a crystal. It was a power crystal, and one half of it was arcane magic, and then the other half it was druidic magic. And the only reason why I knew what it was because I play World of Warcraft, and the way that I saw stuff was like druid is like green and arcane is like purple, and that's how I knew what kind of magic it was. And I started getting attacked because I was doing work with the archangels by the other side, you could call it that. And Chansey made defense mechanisms. Basically, when I would get attacked, it was a direct energy weapon. It would come through the ceiling, and there would be like nets or crystals or spikes that would come up to like defend. And I knew that was Chansey who had done that.
Are you still working in that group?
No, that disbanded, but I'm still working
Okay.
with my friend.
Okay. Interesting. So after that, so at what point did you decide to leave the group?
My guides told me that I was done.
Okay.
They told me one day, it's like, you need to block all these people. And I was like, okay. It was
Oh,
just
wow.
like, oh, okay. And the drama had already happened, and people were acting weird. People were lying about things. And, my friend also, like, she left too. Like, she had to leave. And there was a lot that happened. We would see disasters before they happened. We saw what happened, the fire in Maui. We saw it before it happened.
How did you see
And
it?
it was a vision. It was a
Okay.
vision.
That you
And
both
then
had? That you both had, or?
if I remember, I was told that there was going to be a fire, but I didn't know where. And my friend got told where. My
Mhm.
friend, she's amazing. She's Arcturian. And we found out that we were fractals of each other when I did another one of those quantum hypnosis sessions. We found out that we were fractals of each other. Like, I came through the entire Stargate. But when we fractaled from Source, she went to Arcturus, and I went to Antares, and we separated basically. And then we had our individual experiences.
Okay. So often, people come down as a soul family as fragments of one another,
Yes, yes.
fragments of that soul family, and they break off
Mm-hmm,
to do
mm-hmm,
different parts of the
mm-hmm,
work together.
mm-hmm.
And you can see it happen even with like people you end up working with for a while or
Yes,
doing this kind
yes.
of work with for a while. What else we could, discuss? Anything else you kind of want to bring up, or anything else your guides feel guided or having or guiding you to share today with us?
Okay,
Or
so basically, they wanted me to talk about the fact that there is such a thing as Satanistic ritual abuse.
yeah, SRA. Yeah. Yeah.
And this is something that I've been sent to, not literally like physically, but in the 5D. Go and help out with that, because I have had a lot of lives where I have experienced sexual abuse as a child and as an adult. And they're just telling me that's all we wanted you to say, because people a lot of the time don't believe the survivors, and it's important to be aware.
Okay. Have you had any kind of personal encounters with, SRA in the astral or other realms? And
Not SRA, but I have had encounters with um, people who are working for those people. They have
okay.
tried to hold me. It's a psychic frequency type of weapon. That what it does is that it tries to paralyze you in the astral, so that they can do things to you. And that happened to me once. and I learned that I can just break free. They can't keep me there. Like
How? How did you break free?
so when the way that I broke free was I realized that I could break free. That is the important part.
Okay.
You
You have,
have to believe that you can break free. You can say like, wait, you can't keep me here. This I didn't consent to this. Like goodbye, and I just came back into my body.
okay. Okay. So like I do not consent. It's a big
It's not
one.
even that you not consent. It's just like your force of will. Because at the time I couldn't even like move. They grabbed me there, like and they were trying to like see, like I remember at the time they had created this kind of like room in my room, and there was a being, and I knew that he worked for them, and he was just peering over a door on like his back was to me. He was peering over a door to make sure that nobody could see what he was doing, because he knew he wasn't supposed to be doing that to me, you know.
What kind of being was it?
All I can remember is he had it looked like a wetsuit.
Hmm.
Okay. And everything was covered for a reason. He didn't want me to know what kind of being he was, and he had goggles on, and everything was covered in like something elastic. It was
Mm.
dark, and I think he had a breathing apparatus, so he might have been aquatic. I don't know. And I remember at the time just going like, really? I remember, really? You're doing this right now? Okay. And I just basically broke free and went back into my body. They haven't really, I mean, sometimes they try, but they haven't really tried that since then, thankfully.
Hmm. Okay. So what are you doing? What do you think, what are you doing in the astral with the SRA right now?
I don't know that it's the astral, but what I have been doing is I go do a lot of light language. They just had a conference in, I think, the UK. It was the first conference, and they said we need you to go and clear some of this energy out for them, because you believe them, you love them unconditionally, you know what it's like, and like I just clear some stuff for them.
Okay.
And I
What
know
kind of
that
conference? What conference is
an
this?
SRA conference.
Okay.
Mhm.
Ah, okay.
Because
Where?
they're not believed. It was in the UK, I believe.
Okay. Okay.
It's online somewhere. If you go to YouTube, you'll find it.
Hmm.
Um, and privately, I don't want to say her name, but like privately, I can give you the first woman who kind of the first survivor and her book. Like the first thing that I was like, whoa, this is a thing. Like I did not know. And yeah, if you
Yeah,
want to.
I mean, I did track some of this stuff like a
Mm-hmm,
year or two ago, a couple
mm-hmm,
years ago. Yeah.
yeah,
But I kind of just lost track of it. And of course
yeah,
it's still going on and it's pretty
yes,
rampant.
yes,
So, I guess thank you for being someone
mm-hmm,
who's working on it because I'm not
yeah.
sure how it's going to get dismantled really. Um,
It's already getting dismantled. That's kind of the
okay.
thing, that it's being brought up. They want me to talk about it because this is happening everywhere. We don't even know. It's happening in the US. Like people don't think it happens in the US, that we're untouchable or something. And I'm like, no, we're not. This is
Yeah.
happening here, not just in developing countries. And it happens in Britain, in
Right.
places like that.
Well, I mean, I don't know if you've heard of Teal Swan. I mean, a lot of people have heard about Teal Swan, she talks about it. She's been through it.
Oh
And,
wow. Okay.
are you familiar with her?
No, not really.
She's a spiritual teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And she's very open about it, she's very open about her experience as a teenager and then escaping. And she's actually from
Oh my gosh.
Utah. She lives in Utah. She was a
Oh
Mormon.
wow.
She comes from,
Wow.
yeah, that whole the whole arena there. She
Mm-hmm.
got out of it though. She escaped it. And now she's
Mm-hmm.
doing very well for herself, teaching spirituality to
Mm-hmm.
millions of people. She's a really huge figure in the spiritual
Okay.
community. Um, but yeah, I did some people just don't believe her. And she goes on and she's like, I don't know why I would make this stuff up. This isn't
Mhm.
something anyone
Mhm.
would want. It's not
Mhm.
giving me any
No.
kind of fame.
Mm-mm.
But it's just so incredibly difficult for people to even begin to think that something like that could be real. So like it's much easier to be like, that's BS, that's not
It's
really
just so awful. You don't want to believe it.
it
I
is.
mean, that was me. That was me before I even knew about this stuff. it
Mhm.
was so awful. I'm like, I don't want to believe that,
Yeah.
but it's
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm also someone who likes to try to track and follow what's happening in the other dimensional planes, I guess.
Hmm.
Whether it's some kind of programs that people are put into, like sexual slavery programs and
Hmm.
that kind of
Yes.
thing.
Yes.
That just like even the super soldier programs where
Hmm.
different parts of people are taken into those different programs and they're basically
Hmm.
enslaved in the astral plane. So like they
Hmm.
feel like they're enslaved here on this plane and in this body, and
Wow.
and they're probably miserable. They're probably constantly attracting very terrible relationships and
I see.
playing out really terrible relationship scenarios. But then it's just like part of them are in these programs in these other dimensional planes, in these astral planes, and they're really kind of being messed with. And
Hmm.
it's like a level of how do you get out of that program? How do you get out of there? Like, how do you dismantle it, you know?
Hmm.
That's really a question I ask. And, there are definitely healers out there that can help people. But I really want to explore how can someone help themselves? Like, how can someone be empowered enough to do it, themselves, or to feel like to claim their will, to claim their power, to claim their sovereignty, and
Hmm.
just kind of, do it themselves. But
Hmm.
I mean, I don't know if that's really what's important. I think the important part is that we become conscious of it and do what we
Yeah.
can and find the right people to help us through it too.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's one of those things where like I had a lot of friends who, you know, they didn't want to help themselves,
Yeah,
and I know that like it's like they just sometimes I had to learn to walk away and be like, it's okay for them to have that path.
yeah,
That
that's the
is
lesson.
that is the experience that they wanted to have. And me trying to tell them don't have that experience, it's I don't know, I feel like that might hurt their path. That's kind of the thing that it's like, how do you try to be compassionate and loving, but also realize this is, you need to respect that.
Hmm.
There were times when I would do like oracle readings, and I I didn't know why I was getting this, but I got permission to change people's fate basically through readings for some people. Like I was just like, what? Like you can do this, like you can help them this way. And I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. Like, you know what I mean? Like why do I get
Yeah.
like this? Like
That's
why do I
scary,
have this?
right? It's
I
scary.
know, why do I have this permission? And they're like, it's and then later on they told me it's because you have gone through it. It's because you're responsible. This whole
Yeah.
Chiron thing, that's why. And it's a huge responsibility, you know what I mean? And I take it completely seriously. Like I'm honored by that. And then there were some people that I did their reading and they're like, no, you're not allowed. I'm like, all right.
Interesting. The agreements we make from our higher planes.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
power that comes into changing someone's fate is really fascinating because I've actually noticed that through some of my quantum
Oh,
healing
wow.
sessions.
Yeah.
Some people are so disempowered, but they're so brainwashed by the disempowering thoughts that loop
Yes.
over
Yes.
and over and over again. So I'm like, okay, the only way they're going to get this is if I loop a positive, reinforcing, powerful intention, and I'm going to help them loop that. And so, like,
Oh,
that's the whole NLP thing that, it's just you try to help someone loop a. I'd prefer not to help anyone loop anything or brainwash
yes.
anyone.
Of course. Of
But
course.
sometimes when you see that's the way that person operates, you kind of have to
Mm-hmm.
work with the software program that's in place. I'm not going to go change their entire software,
Yes.
because
Yes.
the likelihood is if I do, I could if I wanted to, but the likelihood is they're just going to go the next day and they're going to change it back to the way it was before because then
Yeah.
they're going to do something
Yeah.
else. It doesn't last and
Yeah.
stick. So
And
then
you gotta learn to leave it alone.
yeah,
You gotta learn to do that. And it's
yeah,
hard. It's hard.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You'll end up feeling depleted at the end. And so,
Yes. Yes. I know
so,
what you're talking about. Yeah.
can people find a way to, are you offering different healings to people, or are you able to like work with people outside of your relationships yet, or are you not doing that? You kind of,
Right now I'm in healing mode,
okay.
but but I do have an Instagram and it's Cari Star with at Cari Star with the four. as the second A.
Okay.
And
I
you
can link
know,
that below. I'll link
yeah,
that below this
I do
link.
also have a YouTube channel that I haven't updated in a while, but you know, it's there. Um, and I'm more active on Instagram. And if people want to contact me, honestly, if they want to, they can. But the people that I know that I have to help, I help. That's how it happens. They just send me people, and they're like, okay, this person, you need to help them. You know, what I mean, okay. And so, if it's meant to be, I'm a firm believer it's going to happen.
Right. I mean, that's what I've noticed also with my work. As soon as I open up the
Mm-hmm.
calendar, I get the right people to come that we're able to symbiotically heal together. So I'm like,
Uh-huh.
I don't consider myself a healer by any means. Like, if anything, I'm
Mm-hmm.
just someone who facilitates the space for someone else
Yeah.
to heal themselves, and then we work
Yeah.
on it together, and it
Yeah.
becomes a beautiful kind of symbiosis with
Mm-hmm.
two, when you do that. So um just like this conversation, right?
I know. I know.
So it was really cool. Thank you, Cari, so much for coming
Thank
on the
you.
show today and sharing all of your experiences. And they're so
Yeah.
cool, so
Thank
vast,
you.
all right, Cari. Well, hopefully we'll talk soon, another time. Anytime you have any projects or anything you want to, bring up, let me know. Get in
All
touch.
right.
All right.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye for now.